What's happening, guys? Pete here. Hope you're doing well. Hey, a question came up and I wanted to address it. So I guess it was a question followed by a scenario. And so a gentleman asked, hey, a friend of mine called me and she was like, hey, you do financial coaching and I've got some financial issues. And I was wondering if you could kind of tell me what you do. And he said that, he gave her the elevator pitch. He had been working on this a while. She asked some follow-up questions, but she hasn't heard from him. He reached out again and she said she was looking at some stuff and some options, things like that. And he said, why didn't my elevator pitch work? And I think the key here to me is that what is an elevator pitch for? And my my best scenario for elevator pitches is not when you're talking to prospects. It's really for networking. It's really for working with people who are asking, what do you do? Not, I know what you do and I have some questions. Because I think that's a different level of question. But say you're going to a networking event, say you're meeting someone, say you're sitting by someone in an airplane row and they just ask what you do. Maybe you're talking to people at your church or other parents at the school, and it's just a question. Basically, what you're doing is you are transferring that basic introductory information to someone else. And this is not for the moments where they're interested. What it will do, if you do it right, if they are interested, if they do have that need, then they'll ask the follow-up question. And if you watch my video about what makes a good elevator pitch, is that it should lead to a logical next question, which you will also have maybe a prescribed framework of answering, right? So, a great one would be like, so how do you do that, right? And here's how I do it. Here's the angle I take on mastering your finances, or whatever it might be. What it's not good for is when somebody already knows. Basically, all you've done then is reinforce what they know. So in this case, when someone came up to this gentleman and said, hey, I know you do some stuff in finances. What do you do? And you come up with your elevator pitch, which is probably something along the lines of, and again, I wouldn't use this, but it's like, I work with people who are struggling with money to help them kind of get some peace of mind and get a handle on their finances. Or, I help people take the pain out of money and I make it fun. Again, none of these I would use. But, if you have something like that and they've already asked you what you do because they have that introductory knowledge, all you're doing is reinforcing it, right? All you've done is kind of go to your go-to cliches about what you do, and you didn't really dive deeper because they're not really asking what you do. They want to know if you can help them. And so to me, the problem with this little interaction is that he gave the wrong information, even though he answered the question that was presented to him. The question, which is, what do you do? My thing, and what I would have done in this case is, especially if someone knows that I do financial coaching or counseling or advising, whatever it is, and comes up to me and says, hey, I've got some questions. I heard you do something in finance. At that point, I don't need to introduce it because I've already got that reputation, small, large, that I'm in finance. My next question would be, yes, I do work in financial services or financial coaching or counseling. Depends on who you're talking to and depends on what you do. But I would say, like, what are you working on? Or is there something that in particular you're trying to figure out? Or is there a goal that you have in mind? Or, anything that you think would be appropriate for them? And it can be very direct. It can be very nebulous. It can be broad, a general. You kind of have to decide, hey, is this a good friend that I can have a really detailed one-on-one with? Is this someone that's more of an acquaintance and I don't want to dive too deep right now? I mean, you'll have to feel those out. But what you want to do is not necessarily answer the question of what I do. What you want to do is you want to figure out if you can add some value to them based on their problem, right? Think of it as the first session, because really at this point, they are engaging you. And this is now, in my terminology, session one, right? That introductory, that fact-finding session. And they may not go beyond this, right? But if you do have this conversation and you do dive a little deeper and they are interested in having this conversation to you, yes, they might be going on in your relationship to a paying client. And what I would say here is that you don't necessarily have to get worried about getting paid right now, right? Because even if I do a first coaching session that leads to the next one, that could be my marketing piece to it. So again, if this person approached me and I said, yeah, I do that and I help people, kind of master their finances. But I'm curious, is there something in particular that you're wondering? And then they go into, yeah, well, we had a kid, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out if we should start trying to save for college or not. Finances are pretty tough. Or maybe they're saying, listen, hey, I'm 50 years old and I haven't done anything in retirement. I'm just trying to figure out like what's the next best step, or is too little too late, or one of the things we're thinking about is we have some debt and we've been trying to pay it off, and I'm just trying to think of like, should we look at some different options because we've kind of lost some hours of work. It doesn't really matter. But now if you get specific, you know where they're coming from. You know what that conversation can lead to, as opposed to repitching what you do that has already been pitched to them at some point in the past. So don't use your elevator pitch for prospects. Use your elevator pitch for those introductions, for the people that don't know what you do, for networking events, those types of things. Use it to get the conversation started, and use it for the people that probably aren't really looking for you, but might keep you in mind, right? That's kind of what you're planting. But for the people who are actually thinking about using you already, and hopefully maybe this is 5 minutes after you've used your elevator pitch, but if they're already there, go ahead and dive into that conversation about what their needs or wants or goals are. Because now if you can uncover that and you can build that trust and you can establish that connection, and even if it's for a few minutes, you're more likely to carry on that conversation later. You're more likely to have them reach out to you, email, text you later, hey, it was great meeting you at that barbecue, it was great meeting you at that kids soccer game, whatever. I wanted to know if we could have another follow-up conversation if you have some time. And I usually keep the door wide open. I try to make it as easy as possible. If people give you that hint of interest, then I will say, hey, do you want to jump on a phone call? I can send you a Zoom link. Here's a link to my calendar, right? I want to break down the barriers, because that is the hardest part, right? It's often said that retaining a client is 5 times easier than acquiring a new client. So now if you have this opportunity, if you have this kernel of a new client, this prospect, right? You want to do everything you can to incubate it, to break down the barriers to connecting. You want to make it as easy as possible for them, show them your value, help them make some progress, and all those other things fall in line, right? The income and the relationships and the referrals and the testimonials, right? But you've got to do that. You've got to do that initial work. You've got to make them a client. You've got to deliver on what you have promised them. You've got to show them value. You've got to help make progress for them. You've got to get them on the right foot. You've got to be a catalyst for their dreams, and then everything else works. So that's my key. Don't misunderstand what the elevator pitch is for, right? And if you have that opportunity with a prospect, just go into it. So that's my tip for the day. Hopefully that helps, and I will see you next time. Thanks.